find me in the spot where the floppies be. Till I give it a read, keep it crisp in the sleeve. Every Tuesday night feels like Christmas Eve. Living between Wednesdays.
What's up, folks? I'm your host Konrad on Wednesday Night Reviews, and today I'm joined by Gifford Roberts, and we're going to talk about We're going to talk about their new book, Dynamic Rodent. Gifford, thanks for coming on the show.
Oh, not a problem. I really appreciate you having me.
Absolutely. Well, we're happy to have you. For the first easy question I always like to ask for the folks out there in YouTube land who've maybe never seen your face, never heard your name, who is Gifford Roberts?
Funny you say that's the easy question. That's the one I struggled with the most when I read that. My name's Gifford Roberts. I'm from Paducah, Kentucky. I guess one of the things that best describes who I am, I guess, would be I'm a Christian, and I think that's important in my life. Very important. I'm a Kentuckian. I also consider that important. I went to college for several years and then worked at a menial, non-useful job, then got Parkinson's. So, yay. But other than that, I've got a comic book and I'm wanting to, while I still can, want to go around and show it to people.
Sounds good to me. And you've got the shirt, we've got the poster behind you, and I have the book here. So, about your comic, what is Dynamic Rodent?
Dynamic Rodent is the story about a fourth grade boy, not very popular, lonely. His only friend moved out of town. So one day after school, one day he was wishing the night before, gosh, I'd give anything to be cool like those superheroes. And the next day he wanders into a factory, as a child does.
As one
What
does.
child
Yeah.
hasn't wandered into an abandoned factory? And for one thing happened, and then another thing happened, and bam, he's a mouse boy. And the guy who saved his life says from falling like rubble that knocked him into the machine, says, you want to go to the hospital? And he's like, no, mouse boy. Stupid answer is hospital, smart answer is superhero. And he learns it's not as easy as he thought it was.
I like it. And I thought that was really funny. In another interview you did, when it was asked, what was a quotable line, you gave them that exact answer, which I quite liked. So can you tell me a bit about, Joey, our rodent boy? What's he all about?
I'll give that in a second. You mentioned the quotable thing. I want to find a quote. If I
Sure.
can find it, that I thought was my favorite quote, but no one ever talks about it.
Oh,
And
bring
it's
it
not
on. Yeah, let's hear
related to
it.
the story at all. It's a side comment. Yeah. So like Joey and his babysitter are watching TV, and the infomercial guy says, "Do you like wasting your money on stupid things that don't work, but you saw on TV? Then do we have a deal for you?" And his babysitter goes, "Huh? Honest infomercial. Who would have thought?"
Yes. That was a
I
great
like
line.
that line. I
It,
thought that was great, and no one's ever talked about it. But no, Joey, you want to know about who Joey is?
yeah, what's going on in his life? Give a little context for the folks who've never
His
read the
mother,
book.
when the story starts, his mother has already passed away, and he's dealing with that. His dad hasn't remarried or is not dating or anything, so it's just the two of them. His dad's a Commonwealth attorney. I don't know what the equivalent. I guess do you have Crown prosecutors? Is that what they're called in Canada?
Yep.
Okay, so it'd be like those, but for the state, like the Toronto Crown prosecutor or Montreal or Quebec.
Oh,
Like,
okay. Yeah, yeah. Okay.
so each county in Kentucky has a prosecutor that like elected, and he's a Commonwealth attorney. That's what his dad does, because my dad was an attorney, and kind of that's a way of relating to it.
Oh, that's cool.
Joey, his mom passed away in the story because mine passed away when I was a kid. So this is a large part based on me. But whenever someone who knew me in the past says that, yeah, it's you, Giff, I tell them no. I became a mouse boy in high school. But you don't notice it because I don't have my costume on. And that's one of the main keys, by the way, of this story is to set that up for the stories to come. The rules of the universe. There's reasons for it, but I don't explain it yet. But no one notices he's a mouse boy except possibly Cody. Uh, no one really notices that till he puts on his costume. And there's another story in the future called Fun Day, where Joey's at a school assembly and watching the like person on stage talk.
Hmm.
He's sitting there like this, with relaxing, watching the guy and picking his nose with his tail. Yeah, so he can get away with things like that when without the costume on.
Okay. I did want to ask about that actually, because while I was
About
reading
picking your
it,
nose in the story, because that was
no.
actually a plot point.
um,
That is a plot point in the first story.
it is, yeah. But the idea or the fact that unless he's in his costume, no one really notices that he's a mouse boy.
Yeah,
Because he very physically transforms. Like in the comic, he
yeah,
goes from a regular looking kid to a mouse child.
yeah.
But yeah, no one seems to notice. So I wanted to ask, was it just because they're not paying attention to him, or do they just not see it?
There's a story reason, but that's not revealed till much later.
Ah, okay.
But actually, there's very much a reason for that, and it's all of it. Everything's set up in this story. You wouldn't know what to look for though in it. In fact,
Oh, okay.
I've already mentioned it earlier in the talk with you. But
Interesting. Okay.
but the thing is, right now it's he explains it away. I think it might have been the page you turned to. It's basically also a commentary slash making fun of Superman and all of
Yeah.
them because all they got to do is take off their glasses and they're Superman. It's kind of like no one notices that either. But he does mention when he's being shot at by the after trying to rescue a kid from being bullied, and then the kid's dad shoots at him with a gun, thinking he's a monster.
Yep.
He thinks, interesting, people only seem to notice I'm a human rat boy when I put on my dynamic rodent costume. Huh, well, makes sense, since other superheroes hide their identity by simply wearing glasses that only covers their eyes.
Yeah.
Well,
I thought that was really funny because he's very physically clearly this rat boy, and yet people don't seem to realize it. Um,
and
so like
that brings I want to that kind of segues into something that you sent me a list of questions for the audience
mhm.
that wouldn't know this. And whether we cover all those questions, we'll see. But one of the questions was, why didn't you aim, since I created Dynamic Rodent as a kid, fourth, fifth grade, why don't I bring him? Why did I not age him up along with me?
Yeah.
Well, actually, I aged him down. He was
Oh, okay.
originally an adult when I was a kid.
Mm.
I brought him down to being a child, like around as partly as a tribute to when I created it.
Okay.
Also because the story's a lot has a lot different stakes when you have a child as the main character. You can get away with, I think, some humor that you couldn't probably get away with as easily just from the child's naivete. And it also raises the stakes of the danger.
Hmm.
And like the without spoiling what happens in this first story at the end, his his babysitter is the one that he has to save at the end. The babysitter's supposed to be the one protecting the child. So it's a little
Yeah.
different than the damsel in distress. It's more like the protector in distress situation. So it's sort of reversing the roles. And in the second story, which has just been finished, and I ordered the copies to be made like last week.
Awesome.
So that one deals with what happens next, and the story is called Ramifications. So there's backlash, there's things that go wrong, I've always described this story as, what if Powerpuff Girls treated it seriously? When you become a superhero, things don't work out the way you think they will.
Mm-hmm.
Joey doesn't have things go smoothly for him usually.
No. It's interesting, like that you bring up sort of the, without giving spoilers, and I'm gonna make sure I don't, but you bring up sort of, like you said, he becomes almost his babysitter's protector. He protects the protector.
Yeah.
Because yeah, some of the situations that Joey finds himself in are definitely more mature than I would have expected from a book with a main character that is his age, fourth grade. Because when I received it, the art style in the book itself, the age of the characters, it very much would indicate like, oh, this is like going to be a kid's book. It'll be, plot wise simple, but it'll have like a good story, like with a good meaning to it to impart to people. But it deals with some pretty complex and adult themes that are seen through the child's eyes. And I
Still,
wanted to ask. Go
well,
ahead.
I want to interject real quick. I do try to keep it kid friendly in another respect, though. None of my stories will ever have cursing in them,
Oh,
and they will never have sex or sexual situations.
yeah.
And obviously, that should be pretty obvious why, especially when the main character is a child. But the cursing thing, also, I don't feel comfortable putting cursing in writing. I do, however, do not shy away from blood and gore sometimes in the stories. And this one doesn't have gore, but it does have a little bit of blood.
Yeah, like what I enjoyed, Gifford, about the book was, with a young character like Joey is, seeing the very adult world and some of the really rough stuff he gets involved into. Like you said earlier, one of the bullies, when he's dealing with them, their father comes out, and sees this giant rat boy, and he gets his gun and he shoots at him.
And also, the kid he tried to save is screaming, "What are you?"
Yep.
And he's goofily going, "I'm." Uh oh.
it, exactly. So I found that interesting because not a lot of people sometimes will write a child seeing such hard realities, but Joey's navigating the world. So I wanted to ask, I guess, what about those stories did you want to tell? What about those situations made you want to write about that?
Okay, well, part of it is I'm scaling up the threats as I go. So the initial threats in the stories are pretty much going to be localized to personal issues. Why the relationships, without going into detail, possibly going wrong with the babysitter's boyfriend. You partly I needed an excuse for the yo-yo string
Yeah.
being because I wanted to make it a stronger yo-yo so he could do other things with it in future stories. But also, again, it's just something you can. Well, I can't relate to a bad relationship like that, but I can relate to bad relationships, and I can relate to what it's like to be scared as a kid. And
Mm-hmm.
what would be more scary is your parents are gone, and the girl protecting you is not able to protect you.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it was such an interesting story to me.
And I want to also. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I do want to bring up another thing about that, which someone else that I gave the free copy to, he didn't want to do a review of it because he couldn't tell the tone. And I'm trying to do the serious and like comedy and drama, like mix them all, kind of like Naruto does. But yeah, there are some funny scenes in that very in funny moments in the very violent bad climax,
Yeah.
but it still works because it's in my opinion, because it's showing what happens when a child would try to help.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up Naruto because I think a lot of people that had the same assumptions I had going in, right? Because of the art style, because of the age of the character, they go, "Oh, it's a kid's book." But then the stuff that Joey sees and that he goes through, that's much more adult. I think Naruto actually is a great bridge. So if anyone's out there that has liked Naruto, especially as a kid, I think they'll click into this because you have a young character, just like Naruto was in the first series, and he's
And
going
Boruto
through,
now.
yeah, and going through a lot of adult tense things that are difficult maybe to communicate with children, and yet through these kinds of stories you could kind of talk about them and things like that, while also being, of course, a fun comic. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, I thought the way you handled that, like me personally, I thought that you handled that really well, um, because yeah, the world is not always sunshine and rainbows, and you communicated that in an interesting way.
Without getting too much of a spoiler, I don't know for sure, but I think it might have been something like what happened here, where he tried to beat up the abusive guy and had the yo-yo thrown back at his head, and then he goes on to do whatever he does next. We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, and the people out there in YouTube land will have to go get the comic.
And it's
Um,
available at indieplanet.com.
Perfect. I love
Print and
that.
digital.
Yes. I was just going to ask. We're about 15 minutes in, and very important to me is to let people know. So, like you said, indieplanet.com, people can get a physical copy like I have, or a digital copy if that's their preference. Um, Gifford, I appreciate it'll all be in US dollars, but what would a digital copy cost and a physical
Digital
copy?
copy is 99 cents in US dollars, and the actual physical copy would be $5. I tried to
Beautiful.
keep it as low as possible to give people an access point.
Awesome. You heard it here, folks. You can get Gifford's book for no more than 99 cents, or if you're like me and like physical, $5. Not a big deal at all.
What I tried to do, and this is because I was new to the printing world, I tried to put a comic on, even mentioned it in the credits page, tried to put an old one I did in college on the back page, but here it's actually here.
Yes,
that
yeah.
but that one is actually available online as right now free if anyone wants to see that.
Yeah. I found this online when I was doing my research. I googled your name and dynamic rodent, and
And
this pulls
he
up.
had a different name at the time too.
Yeah. So I did want to ask about this. So originally you came up with the character, I believe it was 1991, correct?
Some, that was my guess. It's like 90, 91.
Yeah, early 90s. I believe this
Here's
came.
the original drawing.
Yes, perfect. Because in the book here, you tell a great story. Or no, it was the interview I read. You tell a great story about how you were trying to draw Yosemite Sam,
Yeah.
and then you kind of that got loose. Can you actually, you know what? Can you tell that story about how you created
Uh,
Rodent?
if you want, I can like email a copy of that picture so you can put on screen so people can see it better.
That'd be great.
But what happened was I was trying to draw Yosemite Sam, like you said. I was a little kid, either on the floor of the living room or on the kitchen at the kitchen table, using my crayons. I believe looking at it looks like I was using crayons, like that's what I usually used. I was trying to draw Yosemite Sam. That's why the character has the mask. Couldn't remember what
Oh.
Yosemite Sam looked like, and if you look carefully at the drawing, I originally made the mask blue.
Hmm.
And then I realized, as I kept going, I don't know what Yosemite Sam looks like, but somehow I thought, well, people always say raccoons have masks. I'll make him brown, so that's why he's got brown fur. The pointy cape that he originally had, if you look at it, I think I was going for like something I saw in a Dracula cartoon from Danger Mouse or something.
That sounds about right.
And Danger Mouse was an influence about where I came up with the idea for the circle and the DNR symbol. Not exactly the same, but very much inspired by it.
Yeah.
And I don't know if anyone even remembers Danger Mouse, but he was a British cartoon. Uh, and the characters in the background, I just needed a villain. So I was like, Cockroaches with wings of bats carrying knives. Best answer ever.
Absolutely, especially for Dynamic Rodent.
And he's even things weren't easy for the character even back then because he's got a bloody lip if you look at the original drawing.
Yeah. So what I guess I'll ask next is you've mentioned it just left my brain.
I mentioned something.
The
Danger Mouse.
Danger Mouse. Thank you. I remember like I was born in 91 and I, you know, avid nerd, consumed a lot of content. I remember things like 50 Goes West, obviously another famous mouse, Mickey Mouse, and in particular the cartoon show of Redwall. So there's a lot
You
of.
mentioned that in an email to me. I don't know what Redwall is.
Oh, okay. So I was gonna ask what inspired you to make Dynamic Rodent a rat, but
So obviously not Redwall.
not Redwall.
Well, because of as I went and tried to make a raccoon, I decided he didn't look like a raccoon. I'll make him a mouse.
Perfect.
So there was the weird evolution of the character. You think it would be inspired by Ninja Turtles, which I loved at the time. No, more inspired by Yosemite Sam, which is just as random as the rest of my life has proven to be. Sometimes I feel like my life is a cutaway gag from Family Guy or something. How random it can get.
Uh huh.
But yeah, that's as random as it gets, I guess, for a creation of a story, a character.
Yeah. Okay. Um. Interesting. For your information, perhaps you'll like this. Redwall. I'll talk about it very briefly. I saw it as a child as a cartoon. It actually comes from a book series, which I have not read, which I probably should. But basically, it's a series of books that focus on like medieval England. So there's castles, there's
Oh, sounds cool.
yeah, there's warfare, but all of the characters are like mice, raccoons, possums. If I'm not mistaken, one of the villains is like a giant eagle. Another one's like a badger or a weasel. But like it's not like cartoony and cutesy. Like they have like swords and shields and all that. So it's different. It's weird,
Like
but it's fun.
Watership Down, or whatever that was called.
Yeah, that kind of sort of more mature or adult take on it. It's good stuff. So if you've got some time, maybe check that out.
Yeah. Oh, and I also want to bring up the we were mentioning about Joey earlier. Let's rewind that a bit and talk
Sure.
about his costume.
Yeah, please do.
Uh, in his cape is he's a child. He has no way of making a spandex costume, and I'd have no interest in a character having a spandex costume anyway because I think they look silly. So you
Fair.
see on the screen there, he even explains it on that page. His weapon is a yo-yo, which he painted his symbol on.
Yep.
I forgot to explain it. Put that back up for a second.
Sure.
But you see the drawer there? Well, there's also this throwing discs, which I forgot to explain in this story. That's my fault. He never used them in this story, though. But they're his dad's drink coasters
Oh, okay.
that he just paints with the symbol on them. His
Yeah.
his mask is his dad's dress sock, which he made two holes in it. And he decided his cape would be a bath towel, but not just any bath towel, two bath towels sewn together to give it a cool two different colored look.
And that's why he's got the black outside or the dark gray or
Yeah,
whatever, and then the red interior, which very
yeah.
nice. And I mean, it may be just that it's cool, and frankly, I think it's cool. His weapon being a yo-yo. Was there a particular inspiration? Did you like yo-yos as a kid? Like, what was? How did that choice come
I like
about?
yo-yos. I was never good at yo-yos. I can make
Same.
them go down. That was my yo-yo experience. And eventually I learned how to make it go back up, and I was so proud of myself. But I was like, now I'm in college, so I don't think it matters as much.
As long as you're
I
having
couldn't get
fun.
it at all as a kid. No,
we
yo-yo's partly from, I think it might have gotten the idea from Dennis the Menace or something.
Oh, okay.
One of those old children's cartoons.
Yeah.
Surprised I didn't bring in Slingshot. I probably just didn't think of it. But yeah, they're childhood things a child would have lying around. And if he
Yeah.
couldn't find a throwing disc, he swipes his dad's you know drink coasters. And much later on in the story, he gets sharp like throwing discs, and he as he matures up and gets actual good at fighting. But at the beginning, there'll be scenes where he'll throw the drink coaster at a bad guy to get their attention, and it'll harmlessly bounce off them.
Yeah. It's it to me like that part's interesting because he's so young, right? And like you said, his mask is a dress sock he's punched two holes into, stuff like that. He's grabbing what he's got around the house to just try and be this big hero in the world. Um, there's something so charming about that. That I really liked that about this book.
Yeah, that's part. And as I said before, I kind of wanted this partly as a response to the Powerpuff Girls seeming to have things so easy. Like, I mean, they had struggles, but they never had like, okay, well, this there's going to be tragedies, and
Hmm.
then other stories that have tragedies, they don't have the humor often.
Yeah. Well, you do a good job of
Spider-Man, I guess,
mixing.
an exception, but he's not a child, so
Yeah, like I said, I think you do a good job at balancing the tragedy with the humor. Um, and I definitely think the art style is perfect. And I did want to clarify for the folks out there. So with Dynamic Rodent, obviously you're the writer. Um, what other parts of the book did you create? Are you the artist, the editor? Was it all
well,
in
I mean,
one?
I created the looks of the characters, and they had to like adjust from my drawings. The cover itself is my drawing. Uh, they actually changed the way the bath towels were intended to look, but I went with it because I like the idea of tying them together. I had some giant safety pins, but yeah, I mean, I've created the look. In a lot of things you see in the background will be things I created. The symbol on his backpack, if you notice that, that's his elementary school logo. The Peck and
Ah,
P, it's like the P Peck and Elementary, P and E put together that forms a little key shape.
oh, that's cute. Yeah, I don't know how else going to appear, but yeah, right here.
And on the very first page, you see a statue in the billboard, which is based on a statue drawing I did.
Oh, cool.
That's a tribute to the town of Pekin is the original name of my hometown, Paducah, but they dropped that name pretty quickly. So I was like, well, this is a good analog to my hometown while not being quite my hometown. So there's a tribute to the Black Patch War, which was in Kentucky and Western Kentucky and West Tennessee. Very few people around here know about it anymore, so I'm sure most people that watch this in Canada know even less about it. The tobacco companies were charging money and like had monopolies, and the farmers rose up against it, and they burned down the storehouses in several towns. So that's a statue of a man holding the a big thing of tobacco and a, a towel across the shoulder, which is one of the symbols of the movement, holding a Kentucky flag. And then the no the little and then established is when the city would have been established. But the slogan was my response to when I was looking at colleges. I looked at a nearby. I went to their rival, one of their rivals instead. I went to Eastern Kentucky University. But Western Kentucky University had a slogan that was "The spirit makes the master." And I said, "That sounds good. What does it mean?" No one knew. So I wanted to come up with a city slogan that was just as useless but sounded good.
I like that, and of course, you've arrived now on our future is the hope of the purchase, which, I,
Jackson purchases the area of the state, if in case you.
ah, okay. But yeah, it's interesting. Like I find Gifford, your sense of humor is very dry, and I love
Yeah.
it. Because it really comes across in your writing, which is fantastic. Can you tell us a little bit about your artist?
The one I use for this is this team is different from the one from the new one I just finished. So the current
Oh,
artist, which is going to be doing the third story, is Felly White. The artist on this was they used what is it, non de plume? Is that the word when you
art
use a?
artist's name, yeah, nom de plume, yeah.
It wasn't their actual name, but they went by Millipede Lee, and this was their first comic book that they ever did. I don't think they were. I don't know how old they were. I think in like 18, maybe.
Okay.
I mean, it was an amazing job. The art style, and Millipede and I communicated about this about one Christmas around that Christmas time while they were working on it. I commented on how much they've changed and improved as they went along the art. You can definitely tell the style adapts into Dynamic Rodent pretty well at the end, and it's kind of getting used to it at the beginning. Looks more like a children's storybook at the beginning.
Yeah, and you know what? Like something
I think that works for it though.
it does because there's definitely a maturity. Like this is the second and third page.
That
Um,
kid, incidentally, Millipede had no picture of me as a child, but that's what I looked like as a child
oh,
in
that's
cartoons.
interesting.
I had that
Yeah.
haircut and everything.
Huh.
I got
I,
kind of a little creeped out when I first saw that. I was like, "Oh my god, did I send a picture of me?"
and then yeah, so and these are the last sort of two pages, the art on them. But I agree. Like it definitely it's a very cool thing to get to see with indie comics, especially if you have a brand new artist, it's their first book, where their art starts one way, and by the end of the book, usually it'll evolve. And especially in a story like this, that works so well because we get to see Joey, even though I believe the comic's over a fairly short time period, we see him mature quite a bit due to the stuff that he goes through.
Oh, I also wanted to point out that the cover's got a ET knockoff called Any on there, which I designed those characters too, as well as a Universal Defender character from one of my other comic book ideas on the skateboard named Asp.
Oh, nice. So, in that case, Gifford, I guess I do want to ask for sure. Um, you've got one out. You've mentioned already two and three. So are the second issue is in going to be printed now.
It's
Like,
been paid for. When it's up to them when they hopefully start it. I have a convention. I want to debut it in July.
perfect. Well, knock on wood. I wish you the best when it comes to the printing going off without a hitch. I
And
know that
this,
is not always
yeah,
fun.
and the second one's quite a bit longer. It's
Oh,
80 pages.
whoa! That's a big comic. Nice.
And then the next one after that will probably end up being around the same length. Uh, you were just segues into another question you wanted to ask about was my writing style.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I don't, I don't, and I've kind of had trouble with not being able to get some artists because of this. But the ones that I got, I'm really pleased with, and I
Oh,
like
good.
the fact that they can work with me. But some artists didn't like the fact that I didn't divide it by pages. I divide the scripts pretty much by panels, and
Oh,
I wanted to leave it to them to decide because they're the artists. I thought give them the artistic freedom to decide where the page break should be.
so for a little context, for the folks out there in YouTube land, normally when a comic artist writes a comic, they'll start literally page one, and then it's panel one. You'll explain what's happening, and then write the dialogue. Panel two, three, blah blah. Then you hit page two, panel one, blah blah blah. So in this case, Gifford, you're not worrying about page one, page two. You're just going panel one through whatever and allowing your
Yeah,
artist to sort of jigsaw together in their own pace.
yeah. I mean, then
Interesting.
still the order of the panels would be pretty much the same. But if they figure it would break better somewhere else, then I would have chosen. I think I like the idea of letting that be up to them.
That's so cool. So I guess what I want to ask then is the artists that didn't want to work with that, what was their
They
main?
didn't understand. They looked at the comic script and they thought the pages were divided by the. I have them divided by scenes, which probably aren't technically scenes, all of them, but it's a way of referring back to it, so I can say scene one, panel, whatever, and I can refer back to that in another script, and then I'll know where to look. But they thought it was like way too many panels to put on a page, and I tried to explain that that wasn't a page, and they couldn't wrap their mind around it.
Okay, so the ones that did say yes, that did want to work with you,
Yeah,
how did they respond to it?
well, they were okay with it. Felly White was. Millipede, the first story didn't have that. It was just ideas and what kind of Millipede and I worked, fleshed it out a little bit together. Because I was new to the script writing too.
Yeah,
But
interesting.
I still hold to the scene thing, or the panel by panel things. I feel like artists should be able to, but when you're paying by the page, it also gives an incentive to break it quicker. But
Yeah,
yeah, but I think then it also harder to figure out how much it'll cost. But I think the artistic freedom might be worth it.
I like that. Gifford, I like that. That's the first time I've heard something like this, and I, as someone who loves comics and I consume a lot of them, and with what I do and talking with creators and writers, I highly appreciate that you're allowing your artists to just sort of make those kinds of choices
Yeah.
when it comes to the structure of the page. I'm also assuming then when it comes to the exact layout of the page and some of the actions, do you allow your artist to sort of?
Some things like there's very few times in fact I've only got like I have like 30 or so scripts and some of them are like 80 pages of type script length. I think I've only got like two or three splash pages written into the script, but I do have close-up shots indicated, overhead shots
Mhm.
indicated, panning over right left, zoom in, zoom out. I do like label those if they need to be done because there's still a vision I'm wanting to go with,
Yeah,
but it's also their interpretation of my vision.
Gifford, that is so cool. Like that you're so flexible with it. I really like that, and I'm
Yeah,
sure you're the artists that do are willing to work with it. I am sure they appreciate it too.
yeah.
Um, so for your next issue that will be coming out fairly soon now, um, the art style, is it similar? Is it very different? What can people expect?
Well, one of the interesting things you can expect is of two very different art styles because I had two very different artists. My first artist ended up not being able to finish it because his full time job was he got a new full time job about halfway through working with me, and it was taking up a lot of his time. And I understood that, and he ended up leaving, but he was worried that about he was actually kind of worried about me finding a new artist. So I sent him the little sketches that the new artist did, and I thought that was kind of nice of him to be concerned about that. The new artist is absolutely amazing, but is in quicker and very much quicker with the drawings and quite a bit more expensive.
Well, I mean, yeah, if they're just as good and faster,
Yeah,
a little more money makes sense.
yeah, but I mean, I think that it both of them are good, but they're very different styles.
Okay, interesting. And
And what
go ahead.
I was going to mention, in the colorist is different too on this. The first colorist was Macarena Duarte, and at the end of the book, I still had like 10 or so pages to be colored, and I was running out of time. So she got her husband to help.
Oh,
That
nice.
he's also listed down there.
Oh, cool.
I have to something Geronimo Caldora.
Yeah. Oh, that's so cool. So a husband and wife team at the end.
Yeah, I think they did an excellent job. She worked a little bit on Digimon video game recently, or anime.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I will definitely say the coloring, especially like on the last page here, it's very different, but also it's good and it fits
I
that
have
scene
no
well.
idea which one did what on those last pages, but it is a different style at the end once the climax hits.
Yeah, but I think it looks good though. Um,
Yeah,
so I don't want to give away too many spoilers. So obviously in the first issue, Joey's in fourth grade, so he's actually I don't know how old, 8.
it says actually in the story because I had actually made that a specific plot point because I aged him even down further than I originally had him. Uh, my son Joey Blight, his mother recently died, is an average fourth. I thought it said his age. I guess it's just an average fourth grader.
So he's a fourth grader. So
Yeah,
in the second issue, how much time
it
has
takes place
passed?
like the same day.
Oh, okay, wow. So it's like,
It's like
ooh,
immediately after. Like it starts with like a panicked babysitter calling his dad and telling him what happened.
okay. And then the third one that you're working on, is it as quick as well, or is there a time gap
It's
there?
right after the events of the third one
Wow.
um, as the after effects of a story called Ramifications. It's aftermath. Joey still has to go to school the next day.
Okay, interesting.
And then
Um,
he's immediately dealing with a bully in the school for that story.
the one that he encounters in the first issue, is that correct?
No, well, actually, there is a group of bullies that are all named Fred. They actually appear in that story, but they're not the main bully. But they're actually in the first one, though. You don't know that they're called Collective Fred, but there's like a little arrow, Fred, and then also Fred.
Yeah. Like I said, the some of the humor that you have in these is it's very dry. It's very fantastic. It in a lot of ways feels like some of the cartoons I watched when I was a kid. Like the Fred's kind of the naming convention anyway reminded me of Ed, Ed and Eddie, the cartoon show.
Well, actually, that kind of went back to something that happened to me in college, where I didn't know all the people's names, so I just called them collectively Fred Teds. But they threatened to kill me and my roommate because my roommate saw them with a gun. It was a weird mess. But that
Yeah.
was how I made fun of them. And that was also me making fun of them in that comic on the back page. That's why that guy is so stupid.
Oh.
And that
Huh.
was actually published by my school.
Yeah, I was gonna say because when I earlier, like when I found this online, like I said, I googled your name and Dynamic Rodent together, and it the university article popped up and I could download it.
Yeah.
Um, I thought that was fascinating. So you've been working on Dynamic Rodent for
Since like 1990, 91.
yeah. It has that been in bursts? Has that sort of been a slow, steady
It's
burn
pretty
here and there?
consistent up until like sixth grade, so then maybe a year or so. And then I created this group called Universal Defenders, which was like, okay, it's X-Men in space, basically Star Wars with X-Men mixed in. And they were like the terrorists that attacked the bad guy empire. And then after 9/11, I was like, maybe the terrorists might not be a good idea to be the good guys. So I sort of faded away from that idea.
Fair, very fair.
Fair. Yeah.
Yeah, little dicey politically there.
Yeah.
Um, that's interesting. So one thing I will ask is when people get the book, when they read it, they enjoy it. They see some of the dry humor I've been mentioning. Um, what I like to ask generally is there some sort of message, some value you wanted to leave the folks with when it came to the book?
As you read throughout, if I'm able to do all the stories I want to do, it'll be more evident as time goes by. And I think I may have mentioned this in one of the interviews, maybe the typed interview I did. It's about the struggle to make friends and how to deal with loneliness, and that the main like my artist now, or my colorist now rather, she has pointed out to me that it's more of a slice of life
Mm-hmm.
than a superhero, and it's about a kid struggling to make friends and find himself and how whether he's important or not in the world, dealing with his horrible mistakes that get worse and worse as time goes by, and with a few successes. It's just trying to be a good person.
I love it. That's fantastic. And like you said, life very often is not smooth. It doesn't go how we expect, but as long as you're trying to put more good into the world than anything else, I think you're doing
Yeah,
good.
there's like there's so many examples from I can't if I bring them up I spoil future stories. So
Yeah,
what I'm gonna
let's.
so let's not do that, but let's bring up something else. Let's bring up a future story note packet because you mentioned note packets.
Yes, so when I was doing my research on you, one of the other people asked sort of how you work and what you do, and the idea of your note packets came up, and I thought it was interesting. Can you explain that packet that you
Well, I
have?
started out. This also helps to avoid taking from one idea, like accidentally copying a story. Like, you're not going to do that if you spend like months or years on different ideas that you just put in. So, you got my note packet here. If you'll notice, the writing in there is divided by what section. So, Joey to the new principal. Joey Blyton begins to learn or suspect principal George R. Clark is an undercover pacifier agent that'll come into play later. Well, then you've got the blocks, like the colored blocks of text. Those
Okay.
are ideas that don't fit into this story, but are still ideas that can be used in other stories.
It, and I guess what I wanted to ask about this was because I thought it was an interesting way to keep your ideas organized, and as people will be able to see, like some of those things you've clipped out, you've saved for later.
Mm-hmm.
Where did you come up with this style? Did someone teach it to you? Did you just?
No, I just developed it over time as I went. And like when I was working at a call center years and years ago before they closed, uh, this guy I was talking to was in a couple local bands, and I was like, "Oh, I'll buy one of your albums. It's not my type of music, but I want to support local artists." And he's like, when I told him about my comic book idea, and he said, "Yeah, but even if you don't have an artist yet, you could still be writing it." And I was like, "Well, I've got like 10 stories written, but no, he's right. I need to start writing down new stories." So I just started writing them, and I tried to make it one a month. Didn't happen, but it did for a while. But like the second one was a month. But as I went along, the it got more in depth and more to it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started coming up. I started realizing I had different ideas for stories, but I didn't know where to put them. So I had to put them somewhere. And if you just put them in a block of text, it's not gonna. You're gonna forget where it is. So having little colored boxes is a good way to do that. I felt. So, like for instance, here's one. Villain says, "You can do this the hard way or the easy way," and then Joey says, "I thought we've been doing this the hard way already." Or let's see. And then let's find another one. Uh, there's one about I have a Cicero quote, which I was like, "That's a cool quote. Everything has a small beginning."
Mm.
It doesn't fit into this story, so I couldn't. So I'd have to put it somewhere else. And then here's
Interesting.
another one. Someone says, "Awful, awful." What was it? And then there's a problem. I can't read my own writing. Awful, awful, awful rule for a mouse. I didn't know my awful. What? Okay, can't read my own writing on some of them. That can be a problem.
I have that
Uh,
same problem.
yeah. So yeah, there is that problem sometimes. Yeah, so I got like a lot of different. note packets. You'll notice the giant pile of staples on them because I stapled page after page after page to it. Let's see. Why don't then? Oh, here's a good one. Someone says to Dynamic Rodent, "Why don't you go to the moon? I hear it's made of cheese."
I like that.
So yeah,
So I guess like a lot of that to me that's funny stuff, right? Like
yeah,
it's sort of one-liner comedy and things like that.
yeah. But you
Uh,
don't have a story to put the one-liner in, so you just save it for later.
yeah. So would you say, Gifford, for you, the comedy comes first, and then you come up with a story to fit it all
Well,
in?
then I have note packets for stories I don't have a story to. I just have
Oh,
ideas, and we'll work. And then what I do is I type up the ideas and force them into order that sort of means an outline, and then force it into somehow making a story.
absolutely. Okay, cool. So one question I have, because well, I love reading physical comics. When I write stuff, when I research, I send questions to people. Um, for the exact same reason as, like you said, sometimes you can't read your own writing. I have the same problem.
Yeah,
So I am a huge fan of typing everything. I love
and
typing all day.
and I do type the scripts out. I do type the notes out, and that's a way to actually go over it twice.
Yeah, so like I wanted to ask for
I
the
learned that when
process.
I went to law school for 2 semesters. Worked
Okay.
my butt off, but was not able to graduate because I just wasn't good enough. But I did pick up a couple things there that I wanted to bring into this.
Sure.
One was just keep studying and work your butt off, even if you fail, just keep trying. But another thing was I wanted to make sure that I knew my the opposing students' arguments on his appellate brief. I remember once, and I was having so much trouble concentrating, so I retyped his whole paper
Okay. Just
or
to
his
be able to
whole
go
appellate
through it
brief.
and understand
Yeah,
it. Interesting.
and I came and I was thinking about that. I was like, that's actually helped. So I mean, that's kind of what I'm doing here. When you retype your notes that you hand wrote, you're going over them a second time.
Hmm. So for your process then, so you'll hand write out a note, and like you said, it could be something random, something funny that came to mind, a chunk of
Yeah,
story,
and
whatever.
also if you'll notice, I also want to point out, you got a lot of things taped, stapled to the edges.
Yeah.
I don't always have a note packet with me when I think of an idea.
So you sort of whatever you've got, you'll write it on, and then
Yeah,
so you'll handwrite sort of like you said, as these ideas come, you handwrite it on whatever you have. You'll conglomerate it together, and then I'm assuming maybe once a week or once a day or whatever, you'll read through it, and then you'll type up. You'll do a written
no,
thing.
no, these packets grow and grow until I'm ready to do the story.
Oh, okay.
So some of these are years and years old, and there's set place they're gonna go in the timeline. I don't write the stories in order chronologically always. I write the ones that are ready to be finished.
Okay, and maybe you can't explain it. Maybe it just happens because I appreciate creatively. Sometimes things just click, but how do you know when a story's ready?
I know the basic events of the overall series and what I'm building toward.
Okay.
There's an ending in mind I have for the whole thing. And I've been told that's the way to, like, reading interviews of like creators. That's how you're supposed to do a series. Like if you own the series. I mean, Batman has no ending. Spoilers. I mean, the ending for Batman, the ending for Spider-Man will be when they don't sell.
Yeah, fair. But for your own comic, like you said, so you've got an ending in mind.
Yeah,
Obviously, we have now a beginning, and you're just
all the
kind of
villains are
filling in.
lined up already in the very first story.
Oh, cool. Okay, and now you're just sort of filling out history, basically.
Yeah,
Fascinating.
everything's set up. There's a lot of foreshadowing that I tried to make very subtle in that first story. That when you, if it ever gets finished as a series, you can read back and go, "Oh, I see that now."
Huh. That's awesome. That I love that you've got that much planning into it. It's very exciting. We are coming sort of to the end of the interview, but I want to make sure I ask then, because I love asking this question. Um, if all goes perfectly well, if you're able to make everything you want to make, um, do you know how big the series would be, or is it a matter of we know the ending, but how many issues we're gonna get from first to last, we don't know.
Well, I don't also write out the stories by issue. I try to do them by issues. Some of that's one of the reasons the next one's so much longer. It's just however long the story takes to be told. But as of now, I think I said there's like 30 stories, and I'm wanting a time skip about halfway through, like in Naruto, but this time a different dynamic rodent. Like way down the line will be a different one.
Hmm. That's so cool. Awesome. And
And I do want to bring up that yes, Joey will become eventually pretty competent in what he does. He's not now. He lucks out on that ending.
yeah, yes. Again, no spoilers, but absolutely, I think you're right. And I think the folks out there are going to have a fun time getting to know Joey and watching him grow. Important question then for, as you mentioned, the first issue is out on Indie Planet, 99 cents for a PDF, which is awesome. $5 for a physical copy, perfect. Um, the second issue, given it's going to be so much bigger, um, when it's available,
ten
I'm
dollars.
$10, perfect. In the PDF, $2.
One.
Oh, you're keeping
This will
it
be
$1.
99 cents for that.
Awesome. That is so cool. And same spot, they can go to Indie Planet to get the book, right?
Yeah, and this is not me, but Indie Planet, and I'm kind of not the only. It's not news to anyone who's dealt with trying to get a comic with them. They do an excellent job printing, and they seem to be pretty timely. But putting things on their store thing is not very easy, and their
Okay.
contact page is set in construction. I think since they opened, like so, it's about 10 years in construction. So they're gonna have a heck of a contact page when they're done, I'm sure.
Absolutely. Okay, cool.
But
So,
yeah, it'll be up there eventually. I have no idea when.
okay, but you're planning for it ideally.
Well, I mean, it'll be debuted in July at the convention because I'll have the physical copies.
Which convention and where?
It'll be in July 15th in Frankfort, Kentucky, in the Capitol Plaza Hotel, I believe.
Perfect. Thank you, Gifford. And that's where people can go and meet you and get.
Yeah,
Love it. Then in that case, yeah, we've come to the end of the interview.
I
So
appreciate it.
yeah, I always like to ask the same two questions basically. So when you're not busy writing comics, what comics are you reading, or what books are you reading, perhaps?
Well, that was something I prepared for. But this
Perfect.
may take a few minutes. Let me start with the non-comics. And I put the dust jacket on this, but I usually don't have it on when I'm reading it because it's falling apart. But the story about Edmund Burke, I don't know if you're familiar with that British politician, and the nature of politics. And then at the age of the French Revolution, member of British Parliament from Ireland, very influential, sided with the Americans to a degree.
Okay.
To a degree. And then I'm reading the story of Paducah, my hometown.
Oh, cool.
And then as far as comics go, I haven't read these recently, but I did want to bring some up, if
Sure.
that's okay.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see how many I got up here. I got three, well, four, but three different people. The first one is a guy I met on Reddit, and he asked for some advice, and then I asked if I could buy his comic called Siege Town. I don't know if you're familiar with it.
I've actually done a review of that book, and I really like it.
And I think that this is about. I was going to suggest you interview this guy too.
Maybe I will. I haven't
This is an
interviewed him.
amazing book.
I agree. Yeah.
My favorite part was the most unexplained part, and emailed him and said, I love the fact you didn't explain why the guy had no pants on.
Yes.
Just moved on with that. And I was like, that's the best way to deal with that in real life and in the story.
Just
You
keep
see
on
a guy, if
going.
you see a man without pants, don't bother asking him why. Just move on. I think you'll be safer too,
Oh yeah.
especially if it's like the guy in the story. But
Yes.
then also wanted to mention this guy.
Ooh.
It's not a new one, but you can buy it, I think, on Indie Planet.
Hot
It's
dog.
Hot Dog Man. That's all you need to know.
Okay.
It's called Hot Dog Man, and it's about a hot dog themed superhero.
I dig it.
And that one is, I think, by Joe Flores. And then the third guy I wanted to mention, John. This is the guy I sent you the link to his
Hmm.
website. Uh, John L. Guerin. So he's written. I got two of his books, "Lucky to Be Me" and number 2, which I don't have the first. And then walks into a bar, and I would tell you a lot about these stories, but I don't remember much. But I do remember him. He's the guy I sat next to when I debuted Dynamic Rodent at the Small Press Expo, and he seemed like a genuinely cool guy. And it was of all this, he was in he was a pretty he's really good at world building, and there's a lot of strange people there, and it was nice to see a guy that was somewhat normal at that convention.
Fair, absolutely, and I'm glad you had such a good table mate for the
Yeah.
experience.
So I just wanted to bring him up, and he was I don't remember much about the stories, but I do remember he's very good at world building, and he's got a lot of there's a lot of details in the background of Dynamic Rodent. There's a lot of details in the background of his stories.
Perfect. So, for readers out there who are going to go get this now for 99 cents on Indie Planet, pay attention to the background because there's a lot there.
Yeah, if you pull that up, you hold that up right there.
Yeah.
Hold the copy up. You can see the pennant from his elementary school. You can see the city's poster and the
Yeah.
oh yeah, and his friend Cody's got on a Universal Defender T-shirt, and then the Universal Defender skateboard, which is from my other comic idea. Then you've got the ET knockoff,
Yeah.
NE, which stands for non-Earthling.
Okay.
Yeah.
I dig it. That is so cool. Well, Gifford, you've answered my last question as well, which is who should we interview? So thank you for that. And absolutely, I wanted to say thank you for taking the time to come on the show today.
All right, I appreciate it, and I thank you very much for having me. When I do get the next issue up, I would like to contact you about possibly doing a follow up to it
Yeah,
interview if you'd be
absolutely.
interested.
Absolutely. That sounds great.
All right, well, thank you very much, sir.
You too. And for the folks out there in YouTube land, the
Thank you very
first
much for watching.
yes, thank you for watching. The first link down below will take you to get your copy. Hit like, comment what you thought of Gifford and that you checked out the book, and subscribe for more. And we'll see you next time.
Guys have got an amazing talent as well. Watch more of his videos.
Thank you, Gifford.
Golden age to present, digest to oversize. Never miss new comic day. Yeah, no surprise. So where's my no prize? Check the letter columns. Can't find issue 2? Collector problems, cliffhangers, mysteries. You need answers. When did Batman become Green Lantern? I get it. True believer, not lying. Always up for an awesome summer crossover tie-in. High flying, full color or black and white. Splash pages, flashbacks. Whet your appetite with new costumes, team ups, first loves, first appearances.